She portrayed herself for decades as the devoted ex-girlfriend, the silent advocate, and the person who remained silent despite everything going on around her. However, according to recently leaked documents, she is contemplating a step so drastic that music might completely alter public perceptions. Additionally, if she carries through, it will be a downfall rather than merely a controversy. This is the reason this narrative is so unnerving. After their divorce, they did more than simply maintain their friendship. For years, they maintained a tight relationship that sparked curiosity, living under the same roof, guarding one another, and moving as if they were two people bound together by secrets rather than love. And now that ancient ties are receiving more attention, once again her name is being dragged into the same turmoil. She feels music backed into a corner, according to some reports, and being mute has only hurt her reputation even more, and music that she might be prepared to stop defending him for the first time in a long time. And if, as insiders are indicating, she does go rogue, music, the specifics, she might disclose something that once spoken cannot be undone. What changed then? Music. Why at this moment? And after all these years, what precisely could she know? In actuality, the outsider in a scandal is never the most dangerous party. It's the one who remained near enough to witness every aspect of music. The divorce was meant to be the last one. Their marriage formally ended in 1996 as a result of scandal, media attention, and public humiliation. Music. In that situation, the majority of spouses vanish from one another's lives. They divide up the assets, they increase separation. Music, they leave it behind. However, such was not the case here. Rather, something unusual things happened. They continued to communicate, not just co-parents, not just friendly music. They persisted in residing under the same roof at Royal Lodge for many years. Music, entwined in secret, divorced in public. It appeared nearly admirable to the outside world, a contemporary arrangement, two grown-ups putting their families' needs ahead of their own. However, questions persisted beneath the well-polished smiles and well-crafted interviews. Why stay so close following such a public humiliation when the marriage itself was unable to? Music, what kept them together? Those who remain near tend to see more than others. Music, she wasn't just close by in this instance, she was inside the walls, inside the everyday activities, inside the fallout from each negative headline that followed him. As the early 2000s saw an increase in the level of scrutiny around his friendships, she continued to publicly support it. No loud declarations, no obvious fissures. Music, just subdued devotion. However, allegiance can have two sides to it, because the whispers about who knew what and when were louder, along with his controversies. The attention. Music didn't only fall on him with every rediscovered photo, every resurfacing relationship, and every awkward interview. She was still standing there when it drifted toward anyone who was still music, standing next to him. Initially, that intimacy appeared similar to strength, then music began to appear to be complicit. Public opinion, fair or not, doesn't wait for complete proof, it makes lines fast. Music, additionally, that shared home gradually lost its sense of cohesion, more akin to a joint liability. Music, because everybody who is closely associated with a controversy runs the risk of getting drawn under as well. And at that point, the narrative becomes more sinister, because the rediscovered documents not only rekindled long-standing suspicions, but also rekindled a relationship that many people thought had disappeared into the background already. The worst of it seems to have gone for a time. The headlines slowed. The public's anger subsided. The tale was overshadowed by a monarchy that was already dealing with too many issues. However, scandals associated with influential groups seldom go away entirely. They bide their time. The new files then appeared. Newly unsealed documents related to Jeffrey Epstein's network started making the rounds once more, bringing former figures back into the public eye. Pictures reappeared. Email correspondence was re-examined. Previously remote associations felt instantaneous. Music and his name came up again. Hers, however, wasn't far behind this time. Among the information included messages and references that connected her to the same orbit. Music, enough to bring her back, but not charges of misconduct. into a story she might have thought was long forgotten. In situations such as these, inclusion on its own may be harmful. Feeling guilty is not necessary for reputations to fall apart. Closeness is sufficient. He has continuously denied any wrongdoing. Music and being referenced in records does not always indicate that one is involved in criminal behavior. That difference is important. However, popular opinion does not necessarily follow the law. It is based on suspicion. Music and mistrust spreads quickly. These files are important for reasons other than what they display. They bring it back to life. Music. The music public, according to critics, was never entirely satisfied by old queries, old photos, and old interviews. She stood by his side for years as those. The enquiries became more intense. However, sources say something music changed with this most recent release, considering that when documents appear long after you thought the chapter was over, music, it makes you face your mistakes. Was she fully aware of everything? Was the whole story told to her, or was she putting her trust in someone who wasn't being really honest? There may never be answers to those questions. In private, they can be promoting a whole different discussion. Music, and if these files' pressure is what ultimately made her rethink her quiet, then the consequences might be even more unsettling than the records themselves. Typically, this is the point at which someone breaks in controversies like this, not because they wake up one morning and decide to change their ways, or because they suddenly get a conscience. Act morally, but because they understand that the harm has been exacerbated, and insiders claim that's just where she is at the moment. According to the sources, she feels trapped and that her silence is no longer sufficient to protect her. Music, it only makes her appear worse, as if she's taking the blame and choosing the fallout. Additionally, in a narrative, silence might begin to sound like agreement when it is based on mistrust. What is being proposed is more serious than a straightforward PR issue. Music, it's the notion that she protected him for years, believing his assurances, and silently standing up for him when the world became antagonistic. She reportedly feels her hatred toward him, as well as the whole public, building as she looks back over the chronology. Due to everything is altered by hindsight, the past ceases to appear as misfortune and begins to resemble a pattern when events are revisited with new knowledge. According to insiders, she is also wondering if she was ever given the whole picture. Music, or if she was only a buffer, someone who might ease the blow, take in the criticism, and preserve the music's image. However, there is a cost to that protective role. Music, her reputation has been hits throughout the years. Her fame, stature, and name all connected music to decisions that might not have been entirely her own. She is supposedly confronted with a harsh reality when this scandal reappears. In any case, if the public is going to judge her, then she might as well tell the truth to protect herself. Music, because loyalty is ultimately only effective when reciprocated. Music and reconciliation wouldn't be the next step. If she really feels she was left to bear the repercussions by herself, it would be revenge. At that point, the narrative moves from awkward association to a possible betrayal that would reveal much more than anyone anticipated. When people's reputations crumble, there are opportunities. Additionally, it is said that the proposals in this instance are not modest. There are rumors that publishing insiders are quietly circulating behind the scenes. Discussions, very high figures. These are the kinds of numbers that have the power to drastically alter someone's future. Significant amounts are reportedly being floated for a tell-all account, one that would at last clarify what she observed, what she was informed, and what she decided to think. Since few tales have more weight than someone from within the circle choosing to speak, conflict sells. However, cleansing a name isn't the only goal here. The pressure is compounded by financial factors. Her finances have been questioned for years due to claims of growing costs, persistent property problems, and the expensive cost of preserving a particular lifestyle even after official positions were taken away. Financial strain generates leverage in addition to stress. When you have few choices and someone offers you a contract that could change your life, the ethical discussion gets convoluted. Survival begins to compete with loyalty. Silence begins to search. Pricey music, and rumors have it that's where she might be at this moment. On the one hand, music connections to family, decades of shared history, as well as an implicit code of discretion. On the other hand, the opportunity to take back command of her story and, in the process, ensure her financial security. Music. Protecting someone else could no longer seem worth the expense if she feels that her own reputation has already been tarnished, due to the fact that in well-known scandals, the truth that the public recalls is frequently shaped by the first person to share their narrative, and it wouldn't just be a book release if she accepted one of those offers. It would be an announcement that the quiet has ended, and music. If that occurs, the consequences will not be contained in private walls. The damage won't be silent. If she chooses to speak, it would blow up. Because in a situation like this, complete disclosure changes the story, not just adds details. The public has been depending on interviews for years. Formal declarations and well-crafted denials. Music, all of it, however, might be contested in a single chapter by someone who lived inside the narrative. Furthermore, that door cannot be closed once it is opened. Not just one man's already damaged reputation would be impacted by a tell-all. Old friendships, confidential discussions, financial agreements, and decisions made behind royal walls will all be impacted. New context alone has the potential to rekindle anger even in the absence of new crimes. Music, when public trust is damaged, it doesn't. The monarchy has previously borne years of criticism, and it is readily repaired. Doubts could be increased by another round of explosive claims. Music, particularly from someone who was once thought to be faithful. About openness and responsibility at the highest levels, the personal fallout comes next. Family relationships would change during the night. Long-standing partnerships may break down. Private discussions may become into public arguments. Additionally, the moral weight drastically changes if she presents herself as someone who was misinformed or kept in the dark. Since humans are tolerant to errors, they don't overlook dishonesty. If she portrays herself as someone who stood up for him without fully understanding the situation, people may feel sorry for her, and he might once more be the target of increased scrutiny. However, there is a danger. By choosing to reveal secrets, you invite examination of your own history as well. Music, every picture, email, and choice is re-examined. Music, the general public explores rather than merely listening. Therefore, the true concern is not simply what she might disclose, but also if she is ready for what would be disclosed about her in exchange. Because the story can no longer be controlled if someone in the circle chooses to speak. Additionally, in scandals, music based on quiet. The true unraveling starts at that point. What do you think then? Is she getting ready to defend herself, or is music getting ready to reveal everything? Please share your opinions in the comments section below. I've read them all and I'm curious about your thoughts. If you thought this analysis was useful, be sure to switch on and subscribe alerts to ensure you don't miss the upcoming music in-depth. These narratives evoke strong emotions quickly, and when the subsequent update is released, you should watch the music first. Because in situations such as these, the truth does not remain buried indefinitely.